Thank you, thank you. It's so nice to be here, and I have a difficult task to take you away from AI fairy tale land into mundane product development land. Although I promise it's actually well connected with the talk from Andrew, because Andrew told us about the importance of understanding the user problem, which I fully agree with. It's like I can't name the amount of times that we have the request, like, can we have a workshop to understand how we can integrate AI into our product? Like, no, but we can have a workshop about our main user problems and pain points, and then we can think about how to solve them, and then we can figure out if AI is a solution for those problems. And what I want to present to you is a framework that you can use to make your product development more user-centric and understand those user problems. All right. Who of you ever shipped your org chart? You're all liars. You all did. I know it exactly. Right? But of course, PMs never ship their org chart. So that's obviously a problem that happens often in product development. And you see here like these little, this little flow here. That's actually not really meant for you to see the details, but that's how this entire CUJ program at Google started, which I'm going to talk about. The anecdote, the legend goes that Larry Page wanted to help a friend to set up a new Android phone to send a text message. And these were all the screens he had to go through to set that up successfully, which made him really upset. And so he said, like, why are our products so garbage? And then the answer was like, well, we ship our org chart, because obviously many different teams were involved in creating that, like from the accounts team and the messaging team and Android and all these teams, right? And out of that problem, the CUJ efforts was created. That was about 10 years back, and it has been something that has been evolving at Google and that we have been using for many years. So the problem is, in general, like when we have organizations that communicate in a certain way, then we will design systems that are accordingly, and so the risk of us shipping our org chart is significant. And so how do we combat that? The answer is obviously user-centered design. And if you're now panicking that I'm going to give an intro to user-centered design, that's not what I'm going to do. Obviously, you're all user-centered because you're product managers. And I have not ever found a product manager who didn't claim they were user-centered. Obviously, there is a bandwidth there. There's a spectrum. There is, for one product manager, that might mean I always talk to the same 2-3 users, and I ask them, this is a great idea, right? To like the product manager that has integrated, like fully integrated, a lot of touch points within the product development process where users are integrated, so we make sure we develop solutions that are well made for our users. And within that, so the question is, like, how do we transition teams that are not on this perfect end of the scale where everything is well integrated to be more user-centered? And that was the challenge that Google was facing at that time, because we had the situation that we were shipping our org charts and we needed to become more user-centered. There's many things you can do within user-centered design to like make product development more user-centered. And this is not complete. These are just a bunch of examples. You can work out on how you integrate research into your product development, on how you collaborate with the different disciplines, the entire design process, all these things. But within those, I actually want to talk about user journeys and the significance of user journeys to help your product teams become more user-centered. If we understand the most critical user journeys, the most important things our users do with our products, this has an inherent value to product development teams because it will help us to understand the user insights into the process, into how we develop our products. And that's where the value comes from, because we can shift our teams from being centered on technology or our own processes or our own org structure to be focused on users. The concept of critical user journeys, how we use it at Google, consists of three main parts. A critical user journey consists of a user that wants to do something. That user has a goal that wants to be achieved. And there is a bunch of tasks that the users need to do to achieve that goal. It's very simple, only these three things. And if you think about it, it's really intuitive. Obviously, you have a user that wants to do something, and they need to show some behavior to achieve that. How can you use that in product development? Here's an example of a CUJ. User as a small business owner, right? This is on purpose phrased like that. As a small business owner, I want to. So you phrase it from the user's perspective, not from our perspective. As a small business owner, I want to connect with my customers, that's the goal. So I do a bunch of tasks, I respond to reviews, I send out marketing emails, and so on. So these are tasks I do to fulfill the goal to connect with my customers. Every journey starts with a deeper need that users have. Even if you're on TikTok mindlessly swiping videos, you're still fulfilling a need, the need to kill time. And so the goal is about the deeper need that users have. That is what you need to define. It answers the why behind the action, okay? And it's not about a feature, it's not about what they do, it's about the reason they do something. So it's human, it's from a person's perspective, and it should enable the team to think about different solutions to that specific need. So here are three examples from Google products. The first one is from photos. I want to share memories with families and friends. This is a need. This is a goal I have. I have photos, and I want to share those memories with my family and friends. This is not about a feature. It's about what I want to do. I want to share those memories. The second one is from Maps. I want customers to understand my business. I have a business, I'm on Maps, I want them to understand it. That's my need. Or YouTube, I want my kids to watch appropriate content. So these are examples for goals that are important, and these would be journeys that are key for those products. Now we move to tasks. Tasks are basically the how. How do I achieve this goal? Okay? There are specific steps that I need to take to achieve that goal. They're still feature agnostic as good as possible. It's not always completely possible, but as much as possible, keep it feature agnostic, because if you're already designed the feature into your tasks, then it's harder to move away from that and rethink how you solve things. So it should be the present, but also the future. Leave room open to ideate new things. So here, the task for the goals we have defined before, the task would be I send photos to family and friend. I upload my pictures of my business and products. That's one of the tasks I do to get people to know my business. Or for YouTube, I review what videos my kids have been watching to make sure it's appropriate. These are examples of tasks that I would define. So I define the goal, I define the tasks, and I have a critical user journey. So you start doing that for your product. And if you end up with 100, then you know something is wrong. You move to the task level. So now your CUJs are like, I want to configure my privacy setting. Now that's not a goal, right? That's not what people are here for in your product. A good amount of CUJs is like 5 to 7 we have found. If it's much more than that, it becomes, like in product development, it becomes less helpful, right? The more it is, the more difficult it will be for you to use them in the day-to-day product development. These are goals for a made-up music streaming app, not for YouTube Music, if you ask that. Like, I just made it up. I think I used Gemini to come up with an initial set of goals. So this could be the first one. I want to effortlessly find and play the exact song, album, and craving. That's a goal. I want to discover new music that matches my taste or my mood. So stuff I don't know. I want to have my favorite music always at my fingertips. It's also a goal. Like 3 key goals about different ways of consuming music. I want to listen to music without interruptions when I'm on the go. There's no mobile connection. I want to share my favorite music with friends, and so on. These are key goals that will likely not change significantly over time. They might change over time when new things come up, but for a significant amount of time, those CUJs will not change, right? So if you continue to develop your music streaming app, right, the question is, how do these efforts line up with those goals, and how are they impacted? So that's a key thing, and how do you develop that? You come together as product teams, PM, Eng, UX, different disciplines, right? You look at existing research, at everything you know, customer feedback, and then you extract your main goals. You can test them afterwards with users, like through research, right? You come up with a good set of goals that are important for you and your team to understand while you're developing your product. And then you map tasks, goals to tasks, right? So here, this is an example for this made-up music streaming app. As a rock music lover, I want to share my favorite music with friends. So that's my goal. And the tasks are, I find the song album playlist, I open the sharing options, I choose the sharing method, and I share it. These are the tasks I need to do to share a song with a friend. So now we have to find what needs to be done to achieve that goal. Once we have that, we can start using this. We can start using this to understand our users, because our main goal here is to change our product development process in a way that we look at users more regularly, right? Okay, so if we have that, we have defined those goals, and we have to find the tasks. The question is, what does excellence look like? What does it mean when the goals are met? Well, it's useful. Users find value in your product. We heard it before with Andrew. It's like there's an inherent value. You want to delight users, right? So it's useful. The goals are met. For tasks, it means usable. They can do what they do easily without a big effort. It works successfully, right? So both those things we want, useful and usable. That means the outcome of useful is we have happy users because we have a useful product. And how do we measure that? Well, one way we have figured out is really helpful to measure that is with CUJ happiness, we call it. It's the satisfaction with that specific user journey. We do that often in product with action-triggered surveys that ask about the satisfaction with a specific journey. So it's not a generic question such as, how satisfied are you with our product? It's about the specific journey that we're trying to understand. Here's an example, how you do that, right? You get a survey, you know these in-product surveys, and then you need to figure out when to show it. You might know when the user is doing this journey, when there will be different moments in time where it makes sense to show it. And you show something like that. How satisfied are you with using our product for the following? Listening to music without interruptions. And then the users can answer. And if they do, you start understanding the satisfaction, the happiness with that specific journey. And that ends up with something like that. Now we have those 7 journeys, and we can report the satisfaction with those journeys broken down by those journeys, right? So you see, like, I want to effortlessly find and play the exact song album I'm craving. 81% of users say satisfied or very satisfied. These are completely made up numbers, right? I'm not sharing anything real here. And then you might see that there's something else they're not happy with, which here is like managing subscriptions and settings, because they might be really hidden, because we don't want them to change them. And so a lot of people are not happy with that. Okay. That's what we do to measure and understand the goals and how users are perceiving those goals. But we also have the tasks, and we also need to understand that. We said, like, okay, useful and usable. Usable means they can do the tasks without problems. The outcome of that is a successful user, because we have usable products. And how do we measure that? That's CUJ task success or task health. And that's often measured either through the logs or through benchmarks if you can't use the logs. And this is something we have started doing in the recent years at Google. We have elevated our logs to understand CUJ health. And that's when things become really interesting. So, many of you might measure stuff like completion rates, right? And what is a completion rate? Okay, somebody starts something, and then you measure how many people complete it successfully. That's a very minimalistic way of measuring a CUJ, right? You only understand if they started it, and you only understand if they finished it. You don't understand anything in between. But if you think about user actions, they're much more complex than that, right? So you might have this, let me see, I have here a laser. You have a start, right? And then there's actions they take, a flow of different actions, right? And many of them might lead to the desired outcome. Some of them might be really efficient, others not. So you need to understand each step taken in this action flow until the task ends. And the task ending is not only completion or failing, it can be that something happens and it's terminated, can mean that they abandon it themselves, or it can also even mean that they restart the entire task. And you need to understand all those states, you need to understand all the actions in between, the start and the end, and then you're measuring your CUJs with logs. So you need to understand all the signals that are happening for these CUJs. You need to check if are those instrumented or not, and if they're not, you need to instrument them. And you need to start collecting that data and then connecting the dots. And that can look like that, right? These are like these CUJ flows that we use, where you have like, okay, there is a discovery phase in that made-up music streaming app. People enter and they want to listen to something. Either they search or they're on the main page. So you see here that a lot more people take an action on the main page and do not search for a specific song. And on the main page, they might go to genre or to a specific artist, and based on that, a certain amount take an action. Not all of those actions lead to a music listening experience, which would be that. Some of them lead to an abandonment, and so on, right? This is all made up, right? The important thing here is that you start understanding the flows. You start understanding like which of those are successful and which not, and you understand which of those are like the optimal path and which of those are much more longer than we would expect, and why, and do we need to improve that. And then you get something like that, right? So now you're measuring task health and you're reporting that back again for each CUJ, right? And this is obviously not the same as measuring the satisfaction with those CUJs, right? Here you're measuring the behavior. One is behavior, the other one is basically the evaluation of the outcome, the happiness, the subjective satisfaction. And so here you see like different ways of reporting it, obviously, and you have like the green ones would be the optimal path, and the orange ones are like still successful, but it takes much longer than we would expect, and the red ones are the ones that are not successful and that are abandoned or restarted. And you put all of these things together, and suddenly you have a nice view into how the most important things of your product are going, right? From a user's perspective, on the most important journeys that you have defined, how are they doing? And now we know, okay, there's a bunch of CUJs we're doing really well, and there's a bunch of CUJs we're not doing that well, so should we do something about it? What problems are users facing? And suddenly you have, oh, user problems, right? So which are those problems? How can we solve them? Is AI a solution for some of them? Maybe. Now you add to that stuff like open-ended comments from surveys, qualitative insights, and you have like a nice dashboard that provides insights into how your product is doing on the most important journeys that you have defined that you want to serve. So by measuring CUJs, we start quantifying user behavior and satisfaction. And we can look at that regularly. Ideally, like at the moment where we also look at revenue and at latency and all the other nice metrics we regularly look at, we need to look at our user metrics to understand how things are are going, and then start integrating that into the product development. And here's a bunch of actions that we took, that we're regularly taking, how you can use CUJs, right? One is when you're at product definition stage, at prioritization stage, you can use that to figure out what should we work on. Now you have the most important user journeys, right? And you have a list of 100 things that you want to do, and you can only do 10. Which 10 do you pick, right? Okay, you can map now all those efforts to CUJs, and we also know which CUJ is doing well and not. So we can say, should we maybe prioritize the efforts that are improving the user journeys that are not doing well? Might be a good idea. So you can take that into account and as an additional signal to take decisions. It's not the only one, obviously. Users, not the only signal. I always try to explain that to my researchers. It's like, obviously, there's business considerations and so on. Of course, it's one signal. You can also integrate it into PRDs. PRDs, where we define the products, and then we say, okay, there's a section with CUJs. Which CUJs will be changed based on this new thing that we're working on? How are we going to measure success? Well, we have CUJ metrics. How are we expecting those CUJ metrics to change if we work on this feature, right? You can build that into your definition. You can use it in mock testing, right? When you work on a feature, instead of just looking at that feature, look at the entire flow, the entire user journey. Mock it out, right? Because we have defined it. We know what the journey looks like. We can use it to structure user feedback. We get a lot of feedback through different channels, right? Now you can categorize it. This is feedback about CUJ1. This is feedback about CUJ6, and so on. You can create buckets, right? Understand what CUJs do we get more feedback from, and what kind of feedback is it? What problems are we seeing there? We can also use it to understand launch readiness. Like we actually do that regularly, because we always have kind of like these A/B tests just with holding like these experiments we run, and then when you measure CUJs, you can also attach that to the experiment and see how things are going and understand, okay, we're ready to launch or not. And finally, you can also use it for bug fixing, right? If you have always a lot of bugs, always more bugs than can be fixed, right? Now you know that CUJ7 is doing really poorly. Why don't you prioritize the bugs that are about CUJ7? Maybe that helps. So, to close the loop, and that's a very important piece here, is like I am a user researcher, so I'm UX. And if I don't want you to leave this thinking this is a UX thing, because that's when it fails, right? That's how it started at Google. In the beginning, the CUJ effort was a failure because PM and Eng thought that's this UX thing they're doing. They care about these CUJs, whatever that is. Let them do that stuff. And that is not successful, okay? CUJ is meant to change the way you develop products. It's meant to change the way you look at users. And it can only be successful if all the disciplines use them together to change the process, right? So you have PM and Eng who need to map the things they're working on to CUJs, incorporate the CUJs and PRDs and success measurement. You have obviously UX who will use CUJs to understand how the goals are met, to structure the research accordingly, to create the mocks accordingly, to do reviews of the CUJs, also benchmarking studies, these kind of things. Program managers need to make sure OKRs are phrased in a way that that uses the CUJs too, right? That makes sure we use the right metrics that are CUJ related, not just revenue. And then very important, executives need to actually ask to see that, right? And we have that, we have VPs who go like, well, together with all the other business metrics, I want to see the CUJ metrics. How are we doing? Like, this is improving. Why not, right? What are we doing about those low scores? So it needs to be built in the business reviews so we make sure we hold ourselves accountable to the kind of experience we're delivering to our users and not just to how much money we're making. That's it. That was it. Thank you for your attention.